Rabbi Bernstein will take us to an episode, whether it's the Haggadah or hardening Paro's heart, or in this case, Kriyas Yam Suf. He walks us into the episode. We can look around and he shows us over here what's going on, over there what's going on. It's literally like we're there and we're seeing a whole lot of new information that we've never learned before and never put together. And this is Rabbi Bernstein's strength. You're going to love this.
Welcome to Dimensions in Chumash by Rabbi Immanuel Bernstein, part of our collective Journeys in Torah.
Let's just jump right in. The opening section of the Parsha is devoted to Egypt's pursuit of the Jewish people, culminating in the miraculous splitting of the Red Sea, through which the Jewish people traveled and in which the Egyptian army was drowned. Many questions will be raised when we actually look more closely at the wording. Paro's chariots and army, Yarav Vayam, Hashem threw into the sea, and the choice of his officers, Tubu Yam Suf, were drowned in the Red Sea. Rabbi Bernstein points out that this pasuk is doubled over. What's the difference between Paro's chariots and army thrown into the sea and his officers who were drowned? And the first half of the pasuk mentions Vayam, the sea, but why in the second half does it mention Yam Suf, the Red Sea? Next, the pasuk which describes the splitting of the sea reads as follows. Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, Vayolech Hashem es Hayam, and Hashem moved the sea with a strong easterly wind all night, Vayasam es Hayam lecharava, and he placed the sea on dry land, Vayibaku hamayim, and the water split. The pasuk says that the split was affected by Hashem blowing an easterly wind, but an easterly wind blowing on the sea would simply move it to the west, not cause it to split in half. The word describing the sea's movement is vayolech, which literally means to transport. To where was the sea transported? The word describing turning the sea to dry land is vayasem, but this word means to place. How is the sea placed on dry land? The end of the pasuk says that the seabed became dry land before saying that the waters split. Well, isn't that interesting? The Maisa Hashem will give us a complete understanding of everything going on here. First, we must note that sometimes the Torah refers to Paro's army, and sometimes it refers to the army as Egypt. These are not, in fact, talking about the same army. Paro's army are his personal guard, without exception, completely evil to the core. They have been intimately involved in the persecution of the Jewish people and therefore liable, without exception, deserving to meet their end at the bottom of the Red Sea. The Egyptian army has some who deserve to be killed, but most don't. The wicked among them will be drowned, but the goal for the rest is to witness the salvation of the Jewish people. This is the meaning of Pasuk 4 in chapter 14, which says, "And I will be glorified through Paro and his army." This will happen through meting out divine retribution by bringing the sea over them. And Egypt will know that I am Hashem. This refers to the greater Egyptian army who will be there to witness it. With all this, drawing the Egyptians out of Egypt came in two stages. The first stage, both armies needed to be drawn towards the Red Sea, but with Hashem's different plans for each, they cannot come out together. They need to be kept separate from each other. The first step is to bring Paro's guard by themselves. This will be done by making him feel that there is no need to mobilize the entire nation's army. Paro will be made to think that not only are the Jewish people lost and easily pursued, but also that they're scared and they can be easily brought back without the need for the general army. The idea that they're lost is accomplished by having them backtrack towards Egypt, as mentioned in Psukim 2 and 3. The idea that they're scared comes from Pasuk 21 of chapter 13, which tells us that the people were traveling day and night. It's a minor detail, but it's striking. A confident nation does not travel nonstop without rest. This combination of factors convinced Paro that he only needed his guard to bring back a lost, scared nation of slaves. All this led to Paro's decision, as recorded in the Psukim after Paro was told that the Jews ran away. Paro took his people with him. He took 600 chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with officers on them all, and he pursued the children of Israel. The phrase Ve'es Amo refers to his personal army. Paro felt the mere sight of his elite guard with chariots would scare the people into submission. The general Egyptian army was left behind, its presence thought to be unnecessary. but getting close enough to see the Jewish people firsthand, he got a bit of a surprise. Described at the end of Pasuk 8, the children of Israel were going out biyad ramah, with an upraised arm. This depicts a people who are confident and in high spirits. Somehow, Paro had been misled. The Jewish people were not actually scared at all. And with this discovery, Paro is no longer confident, advancing with just his private guard to confront an exultant people who outnumber him 1,000 to 1. He therefore calls for the full Egyptian army. V'yirdefu Mitzrayim achareihem. The Egyptians gave chase to them, and all the chariot horses of Paro, his riders, and his warriors overtook them encamped by the sea near Pi-hahiros before Baal-Zephon. Look at how subtle and beautiful the pasuk separates the regular Egyptian army with Paro's elite forces. Now with the nation's army behind him, Paro feels emboldened to advance along with his private guard to retrieve the Jewish people. So now we see Pasuk 10. Paro advanced, and the children of Israel raised their eyes, and behold, V'hine Mitzrayim nosei achareihem. Egypt was traveling after them. And they were very afraid, and they cried out to Hashem. Notice this pasuk is specifically talking about them seeing the full Egyptian army. The people thought that Paro would come after them with just his guard, numbering a few hundred soldiers, a confrontation they felt they could handle. They were not prepared to see all of Egypt traveling after them behind Paro's personal army. So we're now ready to head towards the Red Sea with a different set of goals in mind for each of the three groups. The Jewish people need to enter the sea, traverse it, and emerge on the other side. Paro's elite army need to enter the sea and not emerge on the other side, but to be drowned within it. And the Egyptian army cannot be allowed to enter the sea. For the most part, they are not meant to be drowned. Rather, they are to reach the banks of the sea, from which point they will witness the demise of Paro's army. But in order for all this to happen, it's imperative to keep these groups separated. And how is this achieved? Psukim 19 and 20 describe how the pillar of cloud, which normally went before the Jewish people, now went behind them, plunging the entire Egyptian camp into darkness. This accomplished two things. First, Paro's camp could continue to move forward, even entering the Red Sea after it had split, oblivious of the fact that it had split. And second, the two armies of Paro and Egypt were not able to successfully regroup and reconnect. This is described in the final words of Pasuk 20. V'lo karav zeh el zeh kol halayla. Neither drew near the other the whole night. My friends, this must be talking about the two Egyptian armies. Could anyone think that the Jews would even try to approach the Egyptians at all? In this way, the three groups continue moving forward until the first of the groups, the Jewish people, arrive at the Red Sea. And as we've noted, the verse which describes the splitting of the sea contains a number of questions. The first, the split was caused by an easterly wind which would seemingly have the effect of moving the sea westwards, not dividing it in half. 2, the use of the word vayolech, to move. Where exactly was the sea moved? 3, the use of the word vayasem, to place. Where was the sea placed? And 4, it appears to mention the water splitting after the sea became dry land. So now we have the framework for all of these answers and more. The easterly wind does not split the sea in half, it moved the water out of the way. The water is transported westward out of the sea and placed onto dry land. But how are the Jewish people not flooded? Because the water splits as it is displaced. So at first, they're in the sea while on dry land, but later, once inside, they're on dry land while in the sea. This is just beautiful. With a path having been cleared for them, the Jewish people entered the sea, pursued by the Egyptian army, as well as Paro's own army, both of whom are still engulfed in darkness. This continues until Paro's elite army is entirely within the Red Sea, while the regular Egyptian army is still at its banks. At this stage, Hashem illuminates the area, allowing the Egyptians to see that although they have not actually entered the sea, they too are surrounded by water on both sides. Paro's army try to head back, but Hashem disables their chariots and immobilizes them. With everyone where they need to be, Paro's army in between the waters about to drown, the Egyptian regular army on the bank, it's time for the waters to return. The returning of the water is mentioned twice in 2 consecutive psukim. Pasuk 27 states that the sea returned to its original form. Pasuk 28 states that the waters returned and covered over Paro's chariots. As we've seen, the water that was displaced to create a path through the sea was moved out of the sea onto the dry land. Why did it not simply pile up on either side of the sea itself? Remember that although most of the Egyptians were meant to witness the drowning of Paro's army in the sea, which was why they were brought only to the banks and no further, a number of them were deserving to die as well. And how did Hashem get them there? The answer is in Pasuk 27. The water which was on either side of the Egyptians while on dry land returned on them from behind as it returned to the sea, taking with it all of those regular Egyptians on the bank who deserved to be drowned. This process is described with the words, Vayinair Hashem es Mitzrayim besoch hayam. Hashem hurled the Egyptians into the sea. In other words, he shook out the Egyptian camp of those deserving to be drowned, washing them into the sea. How perfect is this? Now we can understand that these two psukim referred to the two separate stages of the water's return. It's just unbelievable. And this will help us solve the last mystery, why the pasuk mentions the Yam in the first half and the Yam Suf in the second half. The Yam Suf commonly translates as the Red Sea, but it's more accurately translated as the Reed Sea because of the reeds, Suf, which grow near its banks. When Paro's elite army were drowned, they had by that time entered deep inside the sea. In contrast, the Egyptians, who had been thrown out into the sea from dry land, were much closer to its banks. That's why the pasuk says they drowned in the reeds, the Yam Suf. So again, Rabbi Bernstein brings us right into the episode, allowing us to walk through the events and look around at the fine details as they were happening. It's unlike anything we get to see from anyone else. Thank you again for watching. Of course, you should like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the share button to paste the link to this video into emails and texts to family and friends. They'll all appreciate you for it, and we will all be sharing in the great mitzvah of Talmud Torah.